aquarium can be one of the most amazing and rewarding hobbies you could ever get involved in. But there's more to it than just buying a glass box and filling it with water. Before you get started, here are 10 things you should know before buying an aquarium.
You might think that you'll set up one aquarium and that's going to be enough for you to get your fix. Unfortunately, I know very few people that have ever been able to pull this off. Most people get into this hobby with the intent of only having one fish tank. But then something happens. They're at the fish store and they see a fish that they absolutely love and they must have that fish. But it can't go with the fish that you already have. So what are you going to do? You have to have the fish, so you set up another aquarium to accommodate that fish. And then, all of a sudden, breeding occurs in your tank and you want to save the fry, so you got to run out and get another tank to save the fry. This happens to almost all of us, folks. And the next thing you know, you've got a room full of fish tanks and you're doing videos every single week on YouTube and you've practically lost your mind.
A guy opens his door and gets shot and you think that of me? No. I am the one who knocks.
Okay, I know you saw the ad for a tank setup for $99 or $1 a gallon sale, and you're thinking, I can set a tank up super cheap. Hold on a second. Let's talk about this. Buying the tank is one thing, but then you have the stand, the lights, a heater, and lids. Then you're gonna wanna decorate it, add substrate, a background, and there's one more thing, the fish. Look, I'll be the first to tell you that fish keeping is one of the best hobbies you could ever have. It has impacted my life in so many positive ways. I would recommend this hobby to anyone. It's just not cheap.
A lot of people see aquariums as a moving decoration in the corner. If you are one of those people, I'm going to ask you to reconsider and maybe find a different hobby. No matter what type of aquarium you're setting up, you are housing living things in that aquarium, not decorations. You have to do the right thing by them, and that requires a ton of work. There is maintenance and upkeep involved in keeping an aquarium, and this is not just to keep the water clean, but it's also to keep the water healthy for the fish. If you are someone that can't commit an hour per week to maintaining your aquarium and keep it a healthy environment for the fish, this might not be the right hobby for you. Maybe try stamp collecting, or maybe just be just like me and watch YouTube videos all day about comic books and zombies.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
One of the things that new fish keepers neglect to think about is how much an aquarium weighs. If you're planning on keeping a small aquarium, 5 to 10 gallons, and keeping betas or guppies, this may not be a problem for you. But if you're planning on keeping something bigger, then you better think about this. For the purposes of this example, we'll talk about a pretty common medium-sized tank. Let's go with a 55 gallon. Okay, we're talking about a glass box made of relatively thick glass, depending on what size you get. A 55 gallon is roughly 80 pounds, bone dry. Then we're gonna add lids, lights, rocks, gravel, and then a gallon of water weighs about 8.5 pounds. When you multiply that by 55, then add the weight of the glass and all the other stuff we're talking about, an almost 600-pound box. Grandma's old end tables might not cut it.
While we're on the topic of 600-pound glass boxes in your home, it has to be mentioned that some landlords won't allow you to have fish tanks. If you think about it, it makes sense. If we go back to Lisa's 55-gallon aquarium example, if you are a landlord and you have a tenant that has a glass box full of 55 gallons of water that weighs 600 pounds, and it's being held together with just some thin little beads of silicone, you probably wouldn't want that in your house either. Imagine how much damage 55 gallons of water being poured onto your nice antique hardwood floors, or should I say your landlord's hardwood floors. Imagine the damage that can do. Look, if you're renting a home, talk to your landlord before you set up an aquarium. It might save you in the end. They might tell you it's okay, or they might actually say, go ahead and get them, but I'd like you to add it to your insurance policy. That way, if something does happen, we're covered. That's what Lisa and I had to do in our last house. I started keeping fish in 1993, and needless to say, we didn't have access to all of the information that you have today. If you were going to learn this hobby, you had to learn it from either magazines, a friend, or maybe you ran into a good employee at the pet store. Magazines were these thin little books that would get sent to your house every single month with all kinds of information about your favorite hobbies. They were so cool. Lots of pretty pictures. Another way to learn this hobby was through trial and error. This usually meant a lot of dead fish and a lot of fish mistreated. The beautiful thing is you don't have this problem now. You are holding in your hand right now a device that has all the information you will ever need about this hobby right there at your fingertips. There is no excuse for sacrificing fish or learning this hobby through trial and error. Just do the research. Don't be lazy.
There are very few experts in fish keeping. Most of the people that you come into contact with, whether it's at a pet store or even online like us, will give you information based on their experiences and what does and doesn't work for them. That doesn't mean it's gospel. Some of the worst advice that I've ever been given was by an employee at a pet store. Understand that you're going to experience growing pains. You're going to run into problems, and unfortunately, you'll most likely kill some fish. The important thing is that you learn from it and never make that mistake again. Then you'll have the knowledge that you can share with other fish keepers. This is how it works. This is how the hobby grows.
Okay, so you've decided to ignore number 6 and skip the whole research part. When you go to the store to buy your fish, that's when this is going to backfire on you in a big way. Not all fish can go together in an aquarium. Some for obvious reasons, like some are freshwater and some are saltwater, but some for reasons that are not so obvious. When you see full-grown Oscars and full-grown guppies, it should be common sense why those fish can't go together. But the problem is when you go to your local big box pet store, you're gonna find a lot of fish that are the same size because they're all very young. It's not until they get to be much older that they're gonna grow into size, and that's when it's probably gonna be a problem. You'll figure it out when your fish start disappearing from your tank. But there's other factors involved that make fish incompatible, like differing diet requirements, different decoration requirements, and water parameters. The bottom line is different fish live in different environments and eat different things to survive. If you mix a bunch of fish together that don't have those same requirements, you're ultimately setting some of them up for disaster. Again, everything will start off fine, but then eventually your fish will start dying off. That's when you're gonna figure it out, and that's when it's too late. Do your research before you choose what type of fish you're gonna get. Make sure that those fish are compatible. Make sure that they won't eat each other. Make sure that they require the same type of water parameters and a pretty close diet. Then you're not gonna run into these problems. The experience will be so much better for you and the fish.
Some fish you see in the pet stores get a lot bigger than you might think. You see them in the store's tanks, and they're small and cute, but believe me, looks can be deceiving. The fish is about 1.5 inches long and you say, okay, that's not bad. Then you look at the tiny photo on the price tag of the fish full grown and again say, that looks pretty good. The problem is the fish in the tank and the tiny photo don't give you a real understanding of how big the fish will get when it's full grown. That cute little red-tailed catfish could end up being 300 pounds someday. He might be able to fit in your 20-gallon now, but the question is for how long? And what are you going to do with the fish when he outgrows it? I could not recommend more to do the research of the different types of fish you're looking at before you go to the store to buy them. If all you have room for is a 20-gallon tank, don't buy fish that needs a minimum of 75 gallons. It's just mean. And while we're on this topic, if you ever have someone tell you that fish will only grow to the size of the tank, run away from that person as fast as possible and never, ever, ever speak to them again about fish. I know we're repeating ourselves over and over again, but save some heartache and get fish that will thrive in the size tank you have. So one of the most common mistakes in fish keeping is that the family decides on a whim to stop by the pet store and reward Keegan and Haley with a fish tank. They got great grades, the report card was wonderful, or maybe they got a goal in a soccer game. They run in, buy everything they need, and a bag of fish, take it all home, set it up, throw the fish in there, and voila, fish tank. This will most likely lead to a catastrophe and poor Keegan's heart to just be broken. So slow down. An aquarium is not a decoration that you can set up in the corner and walk away from and just throw a handful of food into every once in a while. Aquariums require work and a ton of patience. There's a process to everything we do in this hobby. And to do the right thing by these animals we keep, we need to be patient and take our time. Don't rush things. If you do, you inevitably make mistakes that can kill fish, cost you a bunch of money, and leave you frustrated to the point where you tear everything down and give up. Take your time, slow down, enjoy the process. Take things step by step, research your butt off, and you'll ultimately enjoy this hobby so much more.
So there you go, 10 things that you should know about aquariums. We upload a new episode of 10 things every single week. So if you enjoyed this video, if you found it helpful, found it entertaining, consider subscribing to the channel so that you don't miss next week's episode. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week with 10 more things.